Like I was totally okay in my skin then, and somehow I lost it, and now I got it back. And it's such a relaxing feeling to have the faith and to allow, we were talking about the unfolding of your life, to like be excited about that every morning when I wake up, to be grateful and like, what's next?
Hello and welcome to The Secret of My Success, where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. I am your host, Erin Currin. On today's episode, I am speaking with Melissa Schwartz. Now, Melissa has worked in sales, marketing, and product development for several home furnishing companies over the course of her career. She has been blessed to meet with wonderful people and travel extensively throughout Europe and China over the years. Her real growth began around 10 years ago as she slowly became aware of a disconnect between the narrative that she embraced about who she was and the emerging truth of who she really is meant to be. If you have not yet, please subscribe. And if you enjoy this conversation, please like the episode. Please help me in welcoming Melissa. Awesome. So on today's episode, I am speaking with Melissa Schwartz. Melissa, thanks so much for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while.
I know we've been trying to schedule
We
this
have
for a
been
minute.
trying. Yeah. Yes, we've been thwarted, but here we are.
Well, I'd say that most of it has been, for fun or decent reasons, whether you're in China or I'm in Ireland. But there have also been some challenges that we've
There
been
are little
experiencing.
technology issues, but yeah, that's okay. It happened the way it's supposed to happen.
Exactly. I'm a firm believer that it happens exactly when it needs to. Usually there's another aspect of someone's story that they want to pull in that hasn't happened yet that they don't know about.
Yeah, that could be. I'm trying to think back of all the different times we had it scheduled and how much more I have to add. Yeah, maybe that's true. Yeah, maybe that's true.
So it's just been fun letting the chips fall where they may.
Yes, letting it unfold, as we say.
Exactly. The unfoldment is an amazing process
Hmm.
when you have patience and faith.
And acceptance. And there's a whole string of things that fall into line so that you can allow that unfolding to happen without it disrupting your peace. Or it
Yes.
actually enhances your peace because it's exciting. You're curious. You can't wait to see what's going to be next. It's freaking awesome. If you can wake up every day with that spirit of gratitude and enthusiasm for what it's going to be and that willingness to accept what is, yeah, that's the best stuff.
I agree 100%. It certainly takes some practice to get there, coming from like the busy work day, needing to know what's next, or the anxiety about, well, you and I
Oh,
were
yeah.
chatting just a little bit before about both of us have moves coming up. Mine is a little bit more imminent than yours. And it's one of those things where the mind, my mind anyway, wants to go and obsess. And there's the part of me that's learning how to really walk in faith and
Yes.
be just, I know that the perfect opportunity is going to be revealed. Do I have the patience to wait for it, or am I continuing to pull the seed out of the ground?
There you go. That's it. Before it's ripe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that patience is a very big thing. And I think that it does come back to that the issue of faith. So wow, we jumped right into that, huh?
Sometimes it just happens that way.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and back up a step so that we can kind of get people up to speed. Normally, I have my guests start us at a point in their story arc where stuff changed or
Yeah.
they had a realization that shifted how they were looking at life. Where would you like to start?
So I would say I have been on this kind of gentle upward spiritual path for quite a while. Very much through ups and downs of life's challenges, new jobs, relationships that went south. And, coming to a point of realization that all of those happened for me and not to me, and that even the worst of them, and there was one that was pretty horrific, even that one, I grew so much in that, and it's really in hindsight, of course, that I, can shake off the anger and frustration and, come to a place of forgiveness. But so this has been kind of happening with me. And about 5 years ago, I was living with my significant other partner at the time. And it was just becoming more and more aware that we were not aligned. Whether it was a misalignment of core values or even some integrity issues or authenticity, it was a struggle. And, I was at the point where I'm like, I don't want to struggle. I want to be seen and encouraged and I'm not somebody's, I think I referred to myself as his like seeing eye dog at one point, his, I was going to get the little vest. So when we would fly and I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need to be that for anybody. I really don't need that. And I left and it was probably sudden. And the only regret I would have from that relationship would be the collateral damage of pain that I caused him. That hung with me for quite a while. I don't consider myself the kind of person that hurts other people. So the realization that that happened, I caused that pain. And he may eventually get to a point where he sees the beauty in the relationship for what it was at that time in his life, or he won't. But that's not really my responsibility,
Exactly.
right? So I forgave myself, and I think he kind of sort of forgave me. I'm not exactly sure, but I think so. But I forgave myself for that. And I made a pledge that I would, in future relationships, be very mindful and carefully vet the things that were important to me, like core values and integrity and, all of those things. And, that somebody also be a person of faith, and it didn't matter. It doesn't matter to me if what God they speak to, but a higher power that helps them to stay grounded, so I kind of knew that. And I found myself being drawn to other people who are on a similar trajectory, over that 5 year period. I met you. I met several other people that I would say were part of like the mindfulness community, and it profound those relationships, even ones that weren't that close, profoundly changed me because they were speaking a language that I thought I was the only one for so long. I met someone else that became I was in a relationship with a while for a while, and that ended, but the friendship didn't end. And he helped me also grow tremendously during this time. Um, he was in recovery, and we started having these really deep conversations about all kinds of topics, like everything. It was crazy. We could talk for like an hour, hour and a half on something very seemingly insignificant, but significant. And so then I started writing down the essence of what we were discussing, and I started recording them, and I shared those, what I called little meditations, no more than 15 minutes. They started with, a peaceful, relaxing, guiding someone through breathing and getting into a good, safe space. And then I would share whatever that little tidbit message, that little teachable moment. And he started sharing them with some of the guys in the recovery meetings that he was in. And I thought, that's an interesting purpose that just suddenly bubbled up. I've always been a pretty good writer, and I'm like, wow, I'm able to use this, use my experience to help someone else. And it felt very organic, and it wasn't work, and it was just a labor of love. And so I continue to do those, whenever I can. And it's just a quiet, fulfilling little thing. He also encouraged me to paint, which I've always considered myself more or less an artist. And so now I'm painting like there's, I don't know if when you get in your new place, if you've got empty walls, I can help you out with that. I've lost. stacks of canvases everywhere, and like, my kids have them and my friends have them. I'm like, take another painting. But but it's fun. It's fun. It's so freeing. And um, yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, during this last 5 years, I reconnected to a place of authenticity, to that 10-year-old girl, weird 10-year-old girl I was, that was introverted and actually okay with that. It wasn't until way into my late teens and early 20s when I realized I was different than anyone else, and that I blushed if somebody said hello to me, and that wasn't okay in business. And I'm like, now I feel like I'm that kid again. I was super weird. I was reading, you know, Charles Darwin's biography at age 10, and I had a pet white rat, and I wrote crazy things, and I read the I Ching. Like, I was 10. Like, I didn't have any friends. Like, that's a hard thing to say. Yeah, come on over and we're going to throw some I Ching sticks that I painted on popsicle sticks. It's not like, girls don't connect with that, so, but weirdly enough, I was okay with it. Like, I was totally okay in my skin then. And somehow I lost it, and now I got it back. And it's such a relaxing feeling to have the faith and to allow, we were talking about the unfolding, of your life, to like be excited about that every morning when I wake up, to be grateful and like, what's next? Even if it's something super challenging, I know it's what I asked for, because I asked God to give me what I need. And if I need to overcome that defect of character that's stopping me from being able to serve others, then I might get it in the form of one doozy of a challenge. So I just say to myself, bring it on. I'll do the best I can. And that's kind of how I've been approaching life these days.
That's really true. Like what you're pointing to, very early on, I've been practicing Nichiren Buddhism for a very
Mm,
long time now.
mm,
And early in the practice, I remember speaking with a senior leader about the prayer and like what you're praying for. And it was expressed to me to be careful what you wish for, because
mm.
when you pray for peace, you don't get peace, you get the opportunity to practice.
That's correct.
And so that's when that asshole is going to cut you off on I-95.
100%.
And like you say, I asked for this.
Yeah.
If my exercise is to learn how to really, like, a couple of months back, I was having a conversation with a coach from my coaching cohort, and he asked me what I was committed to. And I was thinking about it for a moment and thought, I'm committed to a breakthrough in trust. Well, when you ask for a breakthrough in trust, then you're going to begin to see circumstances where you've planted the seeds. You have to know that the harvest is coming. And when it shows up in weird ways that don't quite make sense, that, it really is all part of the process, because
It
there
is.
aren't, in my world, in my understanding of the world, there aren't any mistakes.
No, no. But isn't it interesting? Like I when something like that happens, and I get this crazy pushback, whether a customer is being rude, or my boss is giving me a hard time, or whatever it is, or my kids, I definitely take a pause and go, what exact quality is it that I need to dust off? What's the opportunity here? And to actually, it's like, it's developing a skill set of looking at life through a different lens. And not just everybody understands that. They just instead viscerally react to whatever it is. So when you can take that moment to pause and reflect, it's I just find it like interesting every day. I'm like, what the hell just happened? Like, at the end of the day, I start my day with a prayer and I end with a prayer. By the way, audible out loud prayers, I highly recommend if people don't do that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to touch on that because I started doing that about a year or so ago, and I found, and I compared the difference because I'm analytical in that way. So I would pray to myself, quietly in my head. And I would realize that my monkey mind was hijacking my thoughts almost mid thought. I'd be like, God, da, 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 and it would be like, here he would go, he'd come and snatch the banana off and run the other direction. I'm like, wait, what? I can't quiet it. I can't stick with one thought. What's the matter with me? But if you speak it, the monkey does not have a chance to intervene. He does not get the talking stick. And I'm like, wow, my conversations with God became much more eloquent and more specific about what I'm actually trying to say. And they're longer because I'm like, I got a lot to say. So, fortunately, he's infinitely patient and he's got a great sense of humor. My guy does. So, but yeah, I found that praying out loud is, and then it's like you put the words in the universe. You know, it's if I could have like a little subtitle running under me, it would always be like living life from the inside out, like taking the headlights this way. So whenever you can put it out there, you're creating that energy. It's why I have friends like you in my life now. It's because that energy somehow drew you to me, or we were drawn to each other, or whatever that is. I don't Everything's significant to me.
I think it's a fantastic way to live. And, it can be a little bit challenging for an introvert because I told you we recently went to a Joe Dispenza retreat,
Yes.
1,900 people in the room. And I
I
went.
can feel my panic rising.
I know.
I know. Like, wait, that's too much energy.
Traveled all the way to Nashville to go to this retreat with a friend of mine from here in Fort Lauderdale. He and I basically studied the prep material for 6 months every Sunday evening together. We would watch a video and then do a meditation. It was fantastic. Now, he is an extrovert. He collects people. He'll meet somebody on Facebook and invite them to Christmas dinner
I'm
the
so
next day.
Fascinated by those
I
people.
know.
I really am. I'm like, I think I want to be like that,
No.
but I know I can't do that.
No.
I know I can't, but I'm so in awe.
Well, what's funny is he and I went to the retreat together. We shared a hotel room together and we learned a whole lot about each other and what each of us really is like. When you see somebody once a week for 3 hours, that's one kind of thing. The way he would just go and engage with person after person after person after person and just talk, talk, talk. And I'm sitting over there going, and it was a couple of days in because one of the things we didn't know to talk about was the expectation. And I'm like, I need we're both single. We're both living alone. We both like our quiet time. We're sharing a room. We're in a room with 1,900 people. I was thinking he's got this handled because he's an extrovert. Me, I'm just going to be happy that he's happy with people and I'm going to sit in a corner someplace and we'll meet for meals. And he's like, no, I've never traveled before. I've never been to an event like this before. I'm really looking for you to be my buddy. We're going to go and play. And I'm like, whoa.
You were his service dog for a little while there.
Well, but it's funny because
I don't mean that in a derogatory way.
And not in a derogatory way. I think it was probably the morning of the third day where it hadn't been talked about and we had this little thing show up and I said, listen, this is maybe what you see, but this is, who I am. He didn't know I was an introvert because we met through another friend. And so he had never seen me do that shy kind of meander over sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I have always seen him inviting people and being so outgoing and gregarious that I didn't know that it's because he's lived in Fort Lauderdale his entire life and knows everybody.
And he knows everybody already. Yeah.
He's mastered this landscape.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had this really powerful conversation where we got to know each other on a far deeper level. But we also got to say, okay, great. This is what I need. And this is what I want. And this is the experience that I'd like to have. And we found a beautiful way to make it all work for the both of us.
Interesting.
And I was able to articulate, and it's something that I've kind of known, but like you were saying a moment ago with the prayer, it's different thinking something than it is to truly speak it or
It
write
is
it.
very different.
And I said to him, for me, I would consider this week a success if I met 5 people that I continue a relationship with. It doesn't mean I have to talk to 500. I'm talking, I'm going to wander around and I'll meet my 5 people.
Girl, if I did that in a year, I would consider that a great year.
Well, it's funny
But
because like I met 3 people,
mm,
2 of which I'm still actively texting and connecting
mm,
with. The third, I just wandered over and sat next to her on a bench and we're both like having a quiet moment. And at one point I was just being polite and started making conversation.
mhm,
And she was telling me how they had let go of her bookkeeper. And I'm like,
mm,
are you, it's like I was the controller for,
controller.
right. And I'm going, your bookkeeper. Oh, it's interesting. But I'm thinking, she's telling the story. She goes a couple minutes more and she's like, yeah, and they keep calling me. And I'm like, so what's your position? Oh, I'm the CFO. Jeez. Here I am, kindred spirits,
Right, right, right.
so there are no mistakes.
There are no mistakes.
There aren't any. And I love what you say about really knowing who you are,
Mm.
because when I'm able to authentically identify my needs and how I prefer to show up without making myself wrong for only wanting to meet 5 people,
That's a key point right there.
that's especially because
Yeah.
extrovert, introvert, no matter who we are, we make ourselves or the people around us wrong if we feel like they're out of alignment with something that we haven't even been able to articulate.
And something that doesn't need to be judged or evaluated because it just is,
Right.
right? I mean, like for me, being in a big group like that, I can be okay. I can be okay in that, but I absolutely have to wring out that sponge at the end of the day. So if I don't have time to decompress and to like just like let it all go, I'll be dysregulated.
Yes.
I'll be kind of spinning. I'll be a little bit uncomfortable. I'll be breathing a little too fast, and I know the signs, so, but I just allow that to be like, I accept that, and I know environments that are probably going to be uncomfortable to me. And then I make an evaluation. Is the experience I will likely have going to be something that I will remember, a week, a month, a year from now, or would staying home doing nothing be the thing I remember?
Yes.
Right. So I use that as a simple bar for when I should push myself outside of my comfort zone. Right.
Mm,
And I fully admit I don't have the courage to do it all that often, but it's almost never anything that you regret. It's always a happy experience as something of growth, or even if it was kind of shitty, a lot of noisy people or whatever, there's something out of that that you take away. Or maybe just that one person that you make a connection with who's feeling the same way, and you share your energy. No, don't worry, you'll be okay. You're going to survive this. It's going to be all right. I've had those moments too in those kind of chaotic situations.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's,
Sometimes those are really fun conversations because I remember there was one party that, we know some mutual people, and I had a conversation with a therapist, a counselor earlier in the day. I think it was a
mm,
hypnotherapist. And we were talking about like, even though I'm an introvert, I crave adventure. I crave like
mm,
fun. I like, you talk about that weird kind of
mm-hmm.
expressive. It's not that I don't like people, it's that I'm very particular about the kinds of conversations I'm interested in having.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And, at these particular parties, you can meet that kind of person, but not everybody there is that kind of a person. And it's not like there's anything good or bad about that.
No,
Some
it
people
just
are
is.
social and
Yeah.
they have conversations about stuff, and I'm just not cut that way. And I'm happy to sit on a couch and listen to people.
Hmm.
So it's like as we were creating the event, because I'd made a commitment to go, and I'm going, like, for 2 hours before any event that I commit to going to, I'm going, I really don't want to go. I don't know. Why did I say yes? I should just call and
You're
say that I'm sick and
projecting.
la la la.
Yeah.
And so what I do is I it's a habit that I've started to engage in where I check in and I go, okay, is it really that you would prefer to be at home or that you're just afraid of
You have a
whatever
little
kind of an
anxiety.
experience?
Yeah.
And once I get an answer for that, then I just set an intention to find 1, 2 people to have some kind of a conversation with for a certain period of time, and then give myself permission to leave if that's what I choose to do.
Yes. Very good.
And it's a nice
Because
balance.
you're honoring who you are. And you're
Yeah.
not going to try to force yourself into uncomfortable situations. You may allow it to unfold a little bit and explore it a little bit, but once it gets to a little bit, yeah, you allow yourself to go.
And I found some pretty cool people who feel similar to
Similar.
the way I do.
Like
They've
you and
wa
I at that party,
right?
right? Yeah, like, right.
It's been a couple of times where I've had really great conversations with people who are equally uncomfortable, but really didn't recognize that truth about themselves, and
Yeah,
I
yeah,
helped them enjoy the evening.
yeah.
And we both got something out of the exchange.
I was just thinking about one of the parties. You and I were sitting next to each other, and we were just sitting there. We're kind of just being in each other's presence. Like we didn't even talk that much. It was just like, I'm sitting here with you. So, maybe we get the illusion that we're, having a chat. Like if anybody else is like, what are they doing? And I think at one point you said, you don't have to sit here. You can go. And I'm like, you don't have to sit here. You go. You go. No, you go. Like, can't we just sit here?
Well, and I don't say that as a way to push
No,
people
no, I
away.
didn't. It was you were releasing me if you
Yeah,
thought that I was staying with you, out of comfort or for whatever reason. I understood it
good.
completely, but I was like, I also understood it completely,
Yeah.
and I'm like, well, this is a funny moment, you know, but I I don't know if it was that one or another one where I just decided that I was okay sitting in a big group of people quietly alone.
Yeah.
Like, I was actually okay. I did not my heart rate didn't go up a little. I didn't have even a tiny bit of anxiety, which I definitely, like, in my 20s, 30s, and 40s would have had,
Right.
like, some, like, desperate, like, "Somebody talk to me, please." I didn't have it.
Yeah.
I was just sitting there being. And I noticed other people would come over and, like, I think it was just they were just curious, like, "Why does she look so calm and peaceful?" And I'm like, "Hi," "Just hi. I'm good." Like, and that was such a freeing thing that I can go and just be, and I can listen to other people's conversations and absorb their joy,
Mm,
and I don't have to be an active participant to appreciate the joy and the gratitude around me.
yes.
And I'm like, that's kind of beautiful too. I'm like, every day it's like something else. Like, it's pretty cool.
It really is. Because actually, Mark Cantor, who I had over this morning
Mm,
on my podcast, is a person that I met in one of those situations where you and I were hanging out at a party.
mm.
And then, we kind of got to the point where we're just enjoying, and you decided you were going to wander and connect with somebody. And I just sat there being for a few minutes, and Mark and his wife walked over because I was sitting at the counter. They sat down, they started eating, they just started talking. And I was like, oh my gosh, your story is amazing. Like, I
Yeah, yeah,
want you on the
yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
And I had been thinking to myself, like, before I went to that party, I need to figure out podcast guests and la la la.
Mm.
So it's like when you put it out into the universe, if you just relax,
And allow it to come to you.
then everything that you ask for is going to be delivered to you. And it's fun to see how it's going to show up
Mm-hmm.
because it's not always in a way that you would have imagined.
Yeah, yeah. I think I read a quote somewhere, and it might have been a Joe Dispenza thing, but I listened to a few podcasts, um, and it was about intentional action coming from a place of abundance and curiosity versus desperate action coming from a place of lack,
Mm,
right? So, I try very much not to even actually don't spend any time thinking about what I don't have.
mm,
It's boring.
right?
It's boring. It's not at all interesting. It's much more interesting to contemplate what's out there, what's waiting for you, what you might be able to create, that's infinitely more interesting. And then there's also just being present,
Yes.
and I think for almost all of us, that's probably the biggest challenge, not to be worrying, not to be ruminating, not to be projecting, not to be someplace other than where you are right now,
Mm,
and that's quite the challenge often.
very much so.
Mhm.
One of the people that I met when I was at the retreat, lovely young woman. She's in IT. She's from India. She lives in Atlanta, and she was wearing a necklace that were it was japa, some sort of beads.
Mhm.
And I asked her, like, these are called rudraksha. They're seeds from a tree in India. And so I looked at them, and from a couple seats away, I was like, "Are those rudraksha?"
The ones you have on now are that?
These are
Oh,
rudraksha.
oh,
I asked her, I said, "Are those rudraksha?" And she said, "No, they're," and I still don't remember the name of it. She's one of the people that I really deeply connected with.
oh. Mm.
We got on a Zoom call a couple of days ago just to touch base. How's the meditation going? How, blah, blah, blah. And I was wearing this necklace, and she goes, "You have rudraksha." And I'm like, if it weren't for these, I probably never would have spoken to you.
Wow.
And I got
Mm.
these over 20 years ago. They are sacred seeds, and they each of the seeds has a different number of segments on it that represent some different kind of a healing property.
Oh.
My second husband, Marcelo, his spiritual mentor gave these to me when we met in Argentina 20 years ago. And basically, he gave them to me for protection. And
Mm.
he speaks Hebrew and Spanish, and I speak English. So it was like it's not like we had a conversation. He gifted them to me, and I still am not 100% sure exactly why. But when I was talking with this person and she asked me, "What kind are they?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what kind?" "They're Rudraksha." And she goes, "Well, yeah, but they have different sections." And I'm like, "Oh, one has 4 sections, one has 5, and one has 6." And she says, "Oh, wow, that's very auspicious. That's like very sacred protection." And now I'm curious, going, "I've had these things for 20 years and I don't even know what I'm carrying around. I just think they look cool."
They are beautiful. Do you wear them all the time?
Not all the time, but they are, some of the more frequently worn items. Um, I wear the crystals or the beads that I have based on my, I would say, mood, but it's really based on what I'm called to,
Ah. Mhm.
you know?
Hmm.
So, it's a fascinating conversation, and when we were talking about that, I thought, how many years back did I get set up to have this conversation? And
That's so interesting.
like, how far out do the ripples go?
That's so funny that you mention this because I've been listening to a podcast. I'm like total like fangirl for Tim Ferriss.
Yeah.
Like I listen to all of them. Some of them are really not good, but there are some that I'll listen to 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
One of them was the Arthur C. Brooks one. He's the one that wrote the book about happiness with Oprah, and he's a professor of happiness at Harvard Business School. He's a really interesting guy. Like you might want to check that one out. I've referred or sent forwarded that link to a lot of friends,
Yeah.
and it really worked its way into my psyche because one of the things he talks about is if you want to be happier, and happiness doesn't exist in a vacuum. There's sadness and unhappiness, all those things. But if you want to be happier, teach happiness.
Hmm.
Like anything that you want more of in your life, learn it, understand it, develop a habit, and then share it, teach it. So I try to make that part of my MO whenever I can. But the other one that I was listening to is one by Elizabeth. He interviewed Elizabeth Gilbert. So she's the author that wrote Eat, Pray, Love,
Ah, okay.
right? Erin, she's a badass.
Yeah.
Like, and you were just, oh, what was it that you were just talking about there? Oh, so she was talking about purpose anxiety.
Mm,
Kind of interesting, and so she defined that as, everybody grows up and you're taught that you have a special purpose. And that, by the way, as soon as she said that, I flashed to Steve Martin and The Jerk. I found my special purpose, and I'm like, okay, I need to erase that one because this is derailing my, but that's how my monkey mind works. But anyway, talking about, always seeking that special purpose. You need to find it, and you need to find it as soon as you can, and it needs to serve others. And then you need to figure out how to monetize it, and then you're not off the hook when you die because you need to leave a legacy. It's like, wait, what? Like,
that sounds kind of heavy.
it's really intensely heavy, so and I can kind of identify with that purpose anxiety when I was like in my 20s, 30s, 40s. I'm raising my family. I'm like, okay, that's my contribution now. Like, raise these two little boys that they'll be good men, and at least, I'll raise them so I won't kill them. I'll do my best to deliver them alive into the hands of their future wives. That was my goal.
Wow.
And, so I have that purpose, but I didn't have anything larger really. I did some volunteer work, but it never felt like it was what I was called to do. So I'm like, well, what am I missing? What am I missing? What am I missing? Still not 100% sure, but I think part of it is just these kinds of connections, where you can change a person, or lift them up in one moment in time. you know, that's enough. That is enough.
Yeah.
Just being you and sharing is enough. And she told a story that was really funny. She said she grew up on a farm, and when she was a little girl, her father was always like up on a ladder doing crazy dangerous ass stuff. So her mother would always say, "When you see your dad on a ladder, you go hold the ladder." So she was hyper ladder aware, all the time of like, "Oh my god, he'll fall and kill himself." So he'd be like shaking and she'd run over. So she was at some conference, and she's walking around like during the break, and she sees this guy on this crazy rickety ladder painting the awning of a shop. So she goes over and she holds the ladder for like 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Right. And he finally starts to come down. And as soon as she sees him get to a somewhat of a safe spot, she lets go of the ladder and she just leaves. So there was never any exchange. Like, he never saw her, thanked her. She never saw him or said anything. She just did this thing and left. And then she said, like, this is probably a little bit of an extreme, but it's really interesting. She said, what if my whole life was just about being there in that moment in time? And she goes, so like, I'm going to need somebody sector 9 on this date to hold a ladder. Well, how are we going to make sure she's aware? Well, we'll have her grow up on a farm and she'll really be aware of that. But how would she be there? Oh, well, we'll have her be a famous writer, and she'll be there for a conference, like all these things. And she was laughing, and she goes, and you know what? Nobody can tell me or prove to me that that isn't the case.
Right.
We don't know what's going on. Right. So she's like, I just look for opportunities like that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe this was it, and maybe that's enough.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was a really, so Tim was like, that might be a little bit of an extreme, but it's interesting.
Well, and you have to be in a certain kind of a mindset, because then that begs the question, is there free will, or is it all
Mm,
predetermined?
mm,
Because like the Western mind thinks of the word karma as fate,
ah,
but the real meaning of karma is like an accumulation of action. And
ah,
so, in Buddhism, we talk about changing karma, which you can change karma, and it's not penance, and it's not punishment, and it's not these things. It's really recognizing that every action has the seed of a benefit or an effect. There's a cause and there's an effect. And it's not like magic per se. It's like when I make the cause, I plant a seed, And when the circumstances are ripe for that seed to bloom, then it's going to show up. It could be as simple as you rob a bank, you go to jail. You smoke cigarettes, you get cancer.
Action, consequence.
And it doesn't have to be necessarily that direct. And it's not like the same action gets the same result in everyone's life, because there's a litany of experiences that we all
Mm-hmm.
have. We experience so many different facets and aspects, and everything that we go through colors our view in just a little bit of a way. So where Gilbert saw the latter as a commitment, as a responsibility, somebody else might have been so pissed off they had to save their father every day that they would have just gone the
Correct.
other way.
Right.
So I think that that's a brilliant example, and it's kind of, yeah, yeah. So it's fun to explore. And I love having these kind of conversations because, like, why did you and I meet? Why did Mark and I meet? Why did I go to the retreat that I did at the time that I did? Because I was originally going to go to Marco Island in November, but instead I went to Nashville in September. And now I'm
Uh,
like, well, am I going back to Joe Dispenza in October because it was just so amazing that I need to be in that space again? Is
mm,
that why my plans altered? Like,
mm.
how do you know? But,
But does it matter?
well, if you're
Does
in
the why
tune,
matter?
no. If I'm in tune enough, then I release the why and I just be in the flow and appreciate how it lined up. Because originally it wasn't going to go this way because my choice was X. But then I turned on a different street, I booked a different flight, I did a different thing, and it had me be someplace completely different. And it seems random, but is
Yeah.
it really?
Is it really?
And it's not like I don't ever want to figure it out because then life would be boring.
You're never going to figure it out. I think I read something else that said, like, we're 5 Einsteins away from having any fucking clue as to what is going on.
Right?
Right. And, think about the things that we now take for granted as fact
Mm,
that, 500 years ago would have been total mind blowing, like, this can't even possibly be.
right.
So when you realize all of those discoveries and things, then how do you say to somebody, no, this can't be. Spirits can't be real. And, this can't, aliens can't be real. And no, you can't read auras, which is the other thing I taught myself to do during COVID. But, like, you can't see people's energy. You can't see it. I'm like, okay, that's what you believe. Go ahead, believe that.
Yeah.
You know, that's not my reality. But yeah, it's just,
To a third grader, a fourth grader is a god.
hmm.
And it's like you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be able to know more than the people around you. But you
That's so
also,
true.
like, you don't, it's not an arrogance kind of a thing because it may not be time for them to understand those aspects.
And they may never,
Right.
right? And that's okay too,
It might be another lifetime
right?
before it catches up because somebody has to be on the leading edge. Somebody has to be,
Somebody's the pioneer.
yeah,
Yeah. Somebody's the discoverer.
somebody's the test dummy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, crash test dummy. Yeah, I don't want to be that exactly,
Why
but
not?
yeah. Well, maybe. I'm sure I have been, actually, if I look back. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have been.
Yeah.
We all have scars and bumps and bruises to prove that, whether they're visible or not, right? You know.
I remember I tried sushi for the first time 30 years ago. And I don't remember there being sushi restaurants all over the place. But within 10 years, all of a sudden, sushi was a thing.
Yeah.
And now it used to be that you couldn't find a crystal shop
Oh, yeah.
to save your life. But now, like, they're spitting distance from wherever you are.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's just one of those things where overnight something goes from being unknown to being fully accepted.
Fully accepted.
And it's an interesting kind of a thing because it feels like it comes out of nowhere, but it's have you heard of the 100th monkey theory?
Mm-mm.
um
Tell me.
it's I think I heard it in Gratitude, and I can't remember what they call it, but it's like when someone introduces someone to the work in Gratitude. Gratitude is the personal development
Yes,
company.
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
They call the people that they introduce monkeys.
Uh-huh.
And it's because of this sweet potato thing where one monkey realized that washing a sweet potato made it taste a little better or easier to eat or something. And then all of a sudden, after 100 monkeys pick up this habit, all monkeys are doing it. And it happened out of nowhere. And it's sort of this, during COVID, one of the things that we talked about was herd immunity,
Oh,
where once a
yes.
certain number of people get immunity, then all of a sudden it gets communicated
Mm-hmm.
out at an exponential rate. Whether it's, our bodies are mostly electrical, we're water based precisely because how we function is through electricity and chemicals. And so, like, if you're talking electricity, you're talking auras, you're talking the aura goes out
Yes.
past the body.
Oh, completely.
This is a communication system that goes beyond just me. And so if I'm learning something and my brain is communicating with the mothership, whatever you choose to call it, God, the universe, Allah,
Whatever your higher power. Yeah.
and like that knowledge is not just contained within me. At a certain point, it just kind of becomes common knowledge.
Yes.
Like,
Right.
how do kids
Herd
now?
awareness.
Yeah, how do
Yeah.
kids nowadays know how to use all of the technology before they're 2, 3, 4 years old? Whereas, like, I remember working on a Tandy computer when I was in high school. Most people are not going to know what that is.
I vaguely remember that.
Google it.
Yeah, yeah. I know it. Yeah.
I remember learning how to make the computer say hello across the
We had to
screen.
learn DOS
Yes.
and whatever else, like
Yeah.
Fortran or some, like, I was like, yeah, I'm not going to speak this. I'm probably not going to speak this. I'm going to go back to my little corner and my books
Yeah.
and my guitar and all of my other stuff. And you all figure that out. And then when it becomes herd awareness, I'm sure I'll get it. Like,
Whatever. And like,
yeah,
most people don't know how to program in BASIC. Most people don't need to. You turn on the
yeah.
computer and it just works.
Thank God.
Well, unless it doesn't, which
Unless it does, and
is,
when it doesn't, I have to tell you, there are few things that will derail my peace faster than a technology issue.
yeah.
I can feel my heart rate going up. I get like all panicky. I'll sweat a little bit. I'm getting a little bit better, but I still have that initial like, like I don't know.
I think that's probably a function of, being people of a certain age.
Oh, for sure. I'm gonna get the if I ask my son, the one son will just help me. The other one will be like, okay, boomer, let me talk you through this and let me use really slow. Like you talking slow isn't the issue.
Right.
It's the content of what you're saying. So you do not have to talk to me as though I can't hear you. So that usually starts a little lively conversation in and of itself. But
It's like trying to speak to somebody in a foreign language, but you just speak the English
really
really
slow and
slowly.
loud,
And like,
like
they're
they're
not
hard
deaf.
of hearing and yeah.
No.
I don't understand you no matter how loud you scream, right? Oh my
There are
gosh.
certain things that can be gotten. So, can you believe that we have already been speaking for, gosh,
I'm not even
45
surprised.
some
This was so
minutes?
easy.
Well, so that you have enough time to express whatever it may be, is there maybe something that we touched on or something that you thought, I really want people to know this, but we haven't touched on it yet? Is there something you'd like to leave the audience with?
I think that for me, it's the concept of living your life from the inside out.
Hmm.
You know, figure out what your core values are, identify where your lines of integrity are. When you step out of bounds, which you will inevitably do, you can course correct in real time and be authentic in all that you do. And then just allow it to unfold.
Well spoken.
That's it.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.
I appreciate the authenticity.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for spending some time with me today.
This was so much fun. I knew it would be, but yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation. I'm honored to be here.
You're very welcome. And like after, if your meditations become a bigger thing and you want to come back and talk about how that's going, I mean, who knows?
I will consider that.
Sounds
Let's hope that
amazing.
happens.
Yeah. From your lips to
That's it. The energy's out there. That's already out there.
that's very
Yeah.
true. All right, great. So, again, thank you for enjoying another episode of The Secret of My Success, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Secret of My Success, where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. I am your host, Erin Currin. If you have not yet, please subscribe to our channel. And if you really enjoyed the conversation, give us a like. We'll see you next time.